This is an LLD production.
Welcome to this episode of Owlia's Opinions, the podcast in which we take a better look into the world we love, learn new things, and debate the toughest issues the world has in store. I am your host, Armon Owlia. I am a journalism student here at Drexel University in Philadelphia, and it is time to enter the new School of Thought. First of all, thank you to everyone who has listened to the show. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, spread the word, send the pigeons, whatever, just as long as you get the word on this show out. I'm going to begin by making a special shout out to a very special someone who I hope is listening. As of this taping, my oldest niece Nadia is celebrating with my sister and her family her 10th birthday, which I personally cannot even believe. I love you, sweetie. Have an amazing birthday. I know I'll see you soon, and I cannot wait. On a more somber note, though, my heart is with not just the Jewish community of Pittsburgh, but also the city as a whole. I wanted to say, Mayor Bill Peduto, you are doing an amazing job holding the city together, and thank you for making the city of Pittsburgh a great place to live and giving everyone who lives there or is born there like myself great pride from being from there. With that being said, let's get to work. As a kid, I grew up on Queen. I remember in the car my mother playing We Will Rock You for the first time and telling me a bit about the band, especially its lead singer Freddie Mercury, who was an Iranian. Yes, I know he isn't, but that's what she told me, and I found out later. As I got older, I got to better appreciate the band, learning its history and better understanding the sequence of events that led to Freddie Mercury's unfortunate death from AIDS in 1991. However, there had not been an Amadeus-type film, one that looked more into the music and its making. One that could tell you how Freddie and the band felt during that time, in their own words. So in 2010, when I heard that a film was in the works and Sacha Baron Cohen would play Freddie Mercury, I was beyond split. Yes, I wanted to see a film about Queen, but to see Borat as Freddie? No thanks. Luckily, Cohen left the project and another actor was cast, Rami Malek, a former Emmy winner and someone who I've had my eyes on for a long time, long before he made his television breakout in Mr. Robot. With the trailers that came out and the names attached to the project, such as Robert De Niro, Brian May, John Deacon, and Jim Beach as producers, Anthony McCartan, who wrote The Theory of Everything and Darkest Hour, penning the script, and Dexter Fletcher, directing up towards the end of Principal Photography before being replaced by Bryan Singer, I was quite excited. Turns out, it was 8 years of waiting for absolutely nothing. Well, almost nothing. For a film based on a true story, Bohemian Rhapsody is a completely sensationalized look at Queen, with the filmmakers not even getting the general timeline correct, with Freddie coming out to his bandmates about his HIV diagnosis at Live Aid in 1985, 2 years prior to the real Freddie even learning about his HIV diagnosis. The rest is amazingly tame to accommodate a PG-13 rating and fully doesn't capture the story and exuberance of Freddie Mercury. There are two great things about this film. One which will gain accolades around award season. The other one has already done so, for many years in fact. The soundtrack, all done by Queen, which I've enthused about for a while. That's to be expected and an automatic win. It would take a terrible filmmaker to bungle that up, which is why you should wait for the part after talking about one amazing performance. The second thing that was amazing was Rami Malek's portrayal of Freddie Mercury. No, not what his character had to do or the lines he said. That can be blamed on McCartney. I'm talking about the physical and vocal characteristics that Rami brought to Freddie. Mercury is, as many rock enthusiasts know, a figure in music who has a very distinct singing and speaking voice and way of moving, with a style of expression which, in Freddie's own words, was extreme. Not only was Rami able to take that and make that his own, he was also able to almost match Freddie's sexuality on stage, even capturing how Freddie would react perfectly. In other words, Rami did his homework and effectively disappeared into Freddie. Great preparation will equal strong execution, and this was proven here. Now, as great as the music was, it could have been much better. As Peter Shaffer, the writer of the film Amadeus, once said about Mozart's music in relation to the actual film, the music is becoming the third character of this, and by the third character he meant the third character alongside Mozart and Salieri. In Queen's case, that would need to be, the case, because Queen's music, like Mozart's, defined a generation, and everyone who came to see the film wanted to come for the music. The fact is, as well as the film did, they did not make the music its own character, something just as distinctive as the rest of the band. If anything, it faded a bit into the background and wasn't allowed to have a life of its own. If it was allowed to do it, the rest of the film would have been a lot better and would have probably worked as a whole for a movie. With this film, it should be noted as the end of Bryan Singer's career. His decreasing quality of films after X-Men in 2000 has been well documented, with only one hit, which of course was House MD, coming through television. Plus, with all the scandals he's tied up in, this should just be the final nail in the coffin. Although, it is tempting to give Bohemian Rhapsody a not on the HNN scale, hot, not neutral, for those of you who are not familiar, it would just be me being cruel and unfair. Rami Malek's performance and the music alone were enough to at least raise it to neutral. However, don't expect anything great. If anything, May Taylor Deacon and Jim Beach should do a redo of this film with Rami Malek in the lead again, but this time one that lets it all out and is not tame. There's only one great Bohemian Rhapsody, and to quote it, someone should, how do I put this? Spare me my life from this monstrosity. Sorry about that, guys. So, what do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Either way, please go to www.lovelanddebate.com, click on the Love tab, and you'll find the review there, as well as a list for the top 10 underrated Queen songs. Because they did top 10 Queen songs last time, I decided to do the underrated ones. Put any questions and thoughts in the comments section. So, we are going to take a short break. When we come back after this song by Alexa Mello, we'll be talking about a 79-day experience that ended up changing my view on the world and how it should change yours. We'll be back after this.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You really the stars look very different today. So here am I floating in my tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. And I'm past 100,000 miles. I'm feeling very still, and I think my spaceship knows which way to go. Tell my wife I love her very much. She knows. Ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead. There's something wrong. Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? So here am I floating in my tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do.
So that was Space Oddity, originally, of course, by the late, great David Bowie, but performed here by Alexa Mello. And I have to say, Alexa is one of the few musical guests that I've wanted to get for a while on this program, especially due to the arrangement you just heard. Like myself, Alexa is a huge fan of David Bowie, and I think really did justice to the performance. So as a result, I listened to her other works, including her self-titled album and her new EP, Mute, which is now available. All of which, by the way, is ingenious and breathtaking. Trust me when I say this, for Alexa, as great as she has been, and you can hear how great she was there, I think the best is yet to come. I wish her the best of luck on everything, and I can't wait to have her on the show again. Again, this was Space Oddity, originally by David Bowie, but performed here by Alexa Mello. Alexa Mello's most recent EP, Mute, is available now on iTunes and Spotify. Again, the EP, Mute, by Alexa Mello is available on iTunes and Spotify. All links will be in the description. The morning of November 8th, 2016, started off with a high amount of energy for me. At around 5:30 a.m., I woke up and got dressed and headed down to Drexel Armory to be the first in line to vote. Standing in the cold for about 45 minutes, I thought about the stakes of the election, the presidential election that everyone would witness and would change the course of history. We had, on one side, of course, a businessman who was working hard to build a base and ruin the credibility of his opponent, while spewing rhetoric about people such as Mexicans and Muslims and lying constantly. The other, a skilled and seasoned politician, one who was able to get things done in her career, however, with many scandals that compromised her integrity and a gender battle to boot. We all know what happened, and we all know the result. However, I would not be prepared for what came next. When looking through data from the Pew Research Center, I found that while the number of votes coming from the most vocal voters, people my age or millennials, had gone up, more than 50% of millennials had decided not to vote. Also, of the ones who did vote, they did not realize the dangers of a Trump presidency, and instead voted third party, which completely compromised Hillary's campaign. My belief is that as a woman in a male-dominated society, Hillary needed every vote she could get. When attending protests, only one thought crossed my head. Marching alongside many people who either didn't vote or went third party, why couldn't they experience what I experienced for 79 fateful days in Hong Kong between September and December 2014? Some context here. In 2007, when I was 9, I moved to Hong Kong from Pittsburgh, my bad. At the time, Hong Kong was 10 years into a transition from long-time British colonial rule to partial control under China, under a political ideology called One Party, Two Systems, which essentially meant that while we were a special administrative region, SAR, of China, we would have minimal influence from China and could govern the way we wanted to govern. However, China was well known to overstep its bounds, with every chief executive, which is the Hong Kong equivalent of the president, known to be pro-Beijing. Many people hoped for change, or at least China to leave Hong Kong alone when it came to political policies. Sadly, on August 31st, 2014, China decided to tighten the metaphorical noose by announcing they would pre-screen the candidates for chief executive and the legislative council, which is the Hong Kong equivalent of Congress in the United States or Parliament in the United Kingdom, beginning in 2016, and the people of Hong Kong could only vote from the candidates the Chinese government picked. In other words, Hong Kongers lost the right to vote from the beginning. They lost their own version of what the Americans would call the primaries. In response, multiple groups of protesters, mainly composed of students, decided to respond with nonviolent protests to the point that on September the 26th, 2014, protesters stormed Admiralty, a district close to central Hong Kong, so much to the point that from central Hong Kong to certain sections of the Wan Chai district, which is 2 districts down on Hong Kong Island, traffic was completely shut down. And the Hang Seng Index, Hong Kong's economic indicator, took a massive hit, since the commercial area was now crammed with protesters of all ages. The Hong Kong government would take action, tear gassing the protesters and conducting numerous arrests. As a 16-year-old, this was something that I'd never experienced before. And once I found out why the protests were happening, which was to regain the right to vote, and the damage people were willing to go through to get it, I was all in. Shortly after the tear gas incident, I went to the main protest area with my mother, who I had to promise would come with me to assure my own safety. Yellow ribbons everywhere, with children drawing with chalk on bridges and streets where cars used to be, was quite an image, one that I will never forget. Within an hour, it started to rain. Hard. Because of the tear gas attacks and the fear it may happen again, numerous umbrellas, many of them yellow to match the yellow ribbons that symbolized the protests, went up. And because of that moment, the revolution came to be called the Umbrella Revolution. As time went on, and I got to see how the people were responding to the lack of progress, I became increasingly aware of how important the democratic process was, a process many Americans now take for granted. The yellow umbrellas began to show up everywhere I looked, on television, in theater, even at my school, where many of the teachers and students would talk about their experiences camping on the streets of Central, Admiralty, and Wan Chai. While nothing came of the protests, and the leaders of that were sentenced to unnecessary terms in jail, it changed almost everyone who experienced it. As the Demon mentioned in her interview, she witnessed a lot of people she cared about getting arrested and even helped some of them get to the hospital due to the violence of the Hong Kong Police Department. It also showed me how authority was not always correct, and when they were morally corrupt, it was time to replace them. In other words, the worst thing you could do when given the opportunity to peacefully and legally overthrow the government was not going out and taking action. In other words, every vote counts. Now, we are on the verge of another election, one that will, like the election prior, change what happens in this country. It doesn't matter what you are doing, and it doesn't matter what excuses you throw out. Learn the lesson that I learned 4 years ago, watching an entire country fight for a right we take for granted. Go out there and pull the lever. Our futures depend on it. So what do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Either way, please go to www.lovelanddebate.com, click on the Learn tab, and you'll find the article there. Put any questions and thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to see what you guys think. So we're going to take a short break. Our next musical guest, I must add before we introduce her, will be having a headline full band show at the Barbary in Philadelphia on November 18th. That too will be in the description as well as the details. When we come back after this song by Sophie Corrin, I'll close out the show by addressing a few acts of terror and anger that impacted not only my profession, but also impacted my sense of judgment.
What I have for you, but I hold you close to my heart. So much time's gone by here without you, grown into my own without you. Still I hold eyes closed. That's how loving you goes. Are you my friend or my lover? I can't commit to another. To my heart.
And now, some final thoughts. A debate to start at the end of this program. The pipe bombs in the mail. A shooting inside a Kentucky grocery store. The Tree of Life massacre in Pittsburgh. All three of these events happened within a day of each other, within the past 2 weeks, and have all been pointed to as examples of domestic terrorism. Not only have they been pointed out as examples of domestic terrorism, but there has also been almost an agenda to pin full responsibility on President Donald Trump, his administration, and the Republican Party in general. The reason why Trump and his party has been implicated was due to not only who was targeted, but also because all three perpetrators of each incident were supposedly heavily influenced by Trump or had Trump paraphernalia such as Make America Great Again bumper stickers. Now, as much as I dislike President Trump, and as much as I want to blame him for everything that happened over the last 2 weeks, that would be not only an easy and lazy fix, but also one that is highly simplistic. Now, that isn't to say that the Trump administration and Republican Party have zero responsibility, because they do have some level of it. However, we're overhyping how much the Trump administration and the Republican establishment played in the part of these tragedies. First of all, none of these suspects were associated with any member of Congress, Republican or otherwise, and no member of the White House knew any of these people. If Trump and his administration had been an accessory to these, they would have had to know about these incidents before they even happened, and from the looks of it, they haven't. Second, all three of them were well known to possess racist sentiment, all against different races and various ethnic groups in the United States, and extensive criminal backgrounds long before they committed the acts. A criminal just doesn't become a criminal overnight. It takes time. There are environmental factors, but also there could be behavioral issues or even physical issues. Just slapping a label of, they love Trump, so Trump must be the reason, is not the right way to handle it. Third, and most important, not everyone who either voted for Trump or even supports his rhetoric commits acts such as these. I know a lot of people who voted for Trump, and every single one of them was beyond horrified at the acts committed. Just like political parties and autism, Trump voters are on a spectrum, ranging from the far right, such as those who combine Trump's words with extremist views and attempts acts such as what happened, and to the left, where they only vote for Trump due to them being affiliated with Republicans, or simply because it would be good for business. However, they still believe him to be a scumbag. Now, it's clear Trump, his administration, and the Republican Party as a whole does not have the amount of blame that people accuse them of having. So how much should they be blamed? Honestly, a little bit. But not just how they spread their message, but also how they responded. For example, when Trump knew that Cesar Sayoc was influenced by him to put pipe bombs and packets to George Soros, Hillary Clinton, former President Barack Obama, and former President Joe Biden, just to name a few, he could have easily told the crowd to calm down and warned them not to get violent. Instead, not only didn't he even try to shut the crowd down, he ignored the problem completely and blamed the media for what had happened, as if the media had gotten what it had deserved. Or even playing Pharrell Williams' Happy at a rally shortly after the Tree of Life massacre, which was a completely tone-deaf move. One that could have been equally topped by his suggesting that people now bring guns with them to a holy place. My point is, yes, Trump's administration and the Republican Party are partially to blame, but don't put all the blame on him, and on them as well. Put it on the ones who are going to prison for what they did, because in the end, they were the ones who committed the act, not the establishment. So what do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Either way, please go to www.lovelanddebate.com, click on the debate section, and respond, please. And while you're at it, don't forget to like us on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/lovelanddebate. Follow us on Twitter @lovelanddebate. Follow us on our Instagram page @lovelanddebate. Subscribe to the podcast on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. And don't forget to give us a review. 5 stars would be amazing. My thanks to Omi Larijani for the graphics and show soundtrack, Alexa Mello and Sophie Corin for their amazing musical contributions to the show, and Imogen Aiken and Hilary Lau for their tremendous generosity in lending their voices. That's it for this week. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks, ready to go. Thank you guys for listening, and until next time, keep loving, keep learning, keep debating. We'll see you next time on Owlia's Opinions. Goodbye.
This has been an LLD production recorded in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.